Hello, everyone. This is Tennelle and Roselin Productions, and we're back for a second episode talking about the Wings of Fire series. If you're wondering, hey, second one, I never saw the first one where you talk about the Dragonette prophecy. Well, then you should head over to Avalanche channel because that's where we did the first book.
Yeah, we're going to be switching back and forth between them so that we each get individual credits and all that. It's cool. Teamwork.
Yeah. Woo! So, like I said, this time we are talking about The Lost Heir. So, if you have not read this book, warning, there will be spoilers a bit later on. I think we're going to kind of do a general review here at the beginning. And also, if you're interested in our thoughts on the Dragonette prophecy, be sure to go over to Avalanche channel and check out that.
And it probably goes without saying, but since this is a series of books, this will also contain spoilers for the Dragonette prophecy because we've already covered that. So there could be some things.
There's always those kids who somehow end up reading the sequel of a book first. But
yeah.
I never understood that because I'd always I'd always be that kid who would pick up a book and double check everywhere on the book cover and make sure it doesn't say sequel or anything so that I read them in the correct order.
See, I just got really impatient when I was first reading Warriors and deliberately read Forest of Secrets before Fire and Ice because it was checked out of the library.
Oh no!
So going back and reading
because Forest of Secrets is really good and Fire and Ice is kind of eh.
It didn't leave much. Well, I think it left more of an impact on me because I knew what was coming.
True.
So all those happy moments. I know what's coming. That's another day.
Yeah. So, The Lost Heir. This book is a lot like the first book, but just better in every way.
Yeah, kind of.
IMO.
The first book was pretty amazing, but then the second book kind of takes everything that was good about it and kicks it up a notch.
Yeah.
Which was really fantastico.
And I don't want to get into spoilers yet. I kind of want to just talk generally about the book for a little bit. But I wasn't expecting the jump in quality, and I gotta say, in our last review, you were talking about the whole Clay being a big wings and that kind of taking the piss out of his character arc.
A little bit, yeah.
And when you said that after I read the first book, I wasn't sure I agreed with you, but after reading this book and I guess spoilers, I've read the next book too, but we aren't going to talk about that. But after reading this book and the next book, I totally agree with you because Clay really feels like he's kind of like he doesn't have anything to do anymore.
Yeah, it's he just kind of, there's no more bite to him. He is what he is, and he's really good at what he is, but there's no real hidden depth to him anymore. There were some hidden depths to his character in the Dragonette prophecy, but now it's kind of not really. Throughout the rest of the series, he does the least.
I kind of sense that because he kind of he feels like the token fat kid stereotype now, Pretty
much. Most of the rest of his dialogue is going to be about eating and other practical things like that, where he's just kind of reminding them, hey, we need to sleep, we need to stop and rest, we need to get food. And that's pretty much without revealing anything that you haven't read yet, that's pretty much all he does for the rest of the series. He was a really good intro character and really good as an audience surrogate for that first book, but he doesn't really have a strong purpose for the rest of the series. He doesn't really have any more growth or development, and he's the character whose internal growth shows the least in their outward actions.
That's really too bad because I really, really enjoyed Clay in the first book. I thought the way he was written as slow on the uptake, but still really thoughtful and all that. He was just written really well and really entertainingly. And now, this book, he's barely in this book at all.
Yeah, that's another issue that I'm sure you've noticed with And I know we're starting off on kind of the negative, but it's going to get positive real quick, so we got to get it out there. Pretty much every single book in this arc, the POV dragon goes off by themselves and leaves the group for a significant portion of the book, and that gets really formulaic and kind of sad because they work so well as a group dynamic.
Right. And I like, that would be the one nitpick I have about this book, is it feels very similar to the first.
They did get really formulaic, and I know that they did it for the sake of character development and character focus, but at the same time, they're so good when they're together.
And it's kind of like the Harry Potter thing, you know, where it's like you have the first book and the second book that are like so similar to each other, and yet like the second one just kind of improves upon a whole lot of things and like gives you just tiny bits of story, but doesn't really get into the meat of the overarching story. That's kind of this book, and it does it really, really well. But that's kind of what this book is.
Yeah, it's like the first book introduces you to the concept, the second book shows you how far they can take that concept, and then the third book is where the plot really gets going. Which is what a lot of series end up being. Like you said, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Warriors, a lot of the times the arc doesn't really pick up until the third book or so.
Although usually in Warriors, the second book is like typically the worst.
Yeah, it's usually just kind of the bridge, but it's Cerberus syndrome, and it is definitely in the Wings of Fire books, in the second arc as well. The first two are pretty good, but the third one's where the plot kicks off. Cerberus syndrome, rule of 3.
But I will say, you know, this book is really good. And I guess what really saves this book is the lead character, Tsunami, who I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did.
Yeah,
as a POV, because I liked her as a side character to Clay, but I wasn't sure if when we got to her as a POV, if she'd become tolerable, you know?
Yeah, but then it turns out she's actually like really interesting and has a lot going on in there.
Yeah, she's really thoughtful, and she really has this drive to be the leader of the group, which the group doesn't necessarily see her as right away, but then she kind of comes into her own.
Yeah, and the themes of this particular installment is all about leadership, what makes a good leader, what, you know, you need to do to lead, and how there's different ways of approaching leadership. And pretty much her whole arc is figuring out the kind of leader she wants to be and what makes a good leader, and then trying to be one.
And I think they wrap that all up much nicer than they do in the first book.
Yeah, like there's a solid arc here that, you know, she did a thing and she's got to learn from that thing and figure herself out.
Right. So do you have any more thoughts you want to get out there before we go into like the more spoiler section?
Gosh, I don't really know. Because I haven't read this one in a while. Like, I was just kind of skimming over it and reading some of my notes. And I guess we could talk about Queen Coral's character. I don't think that Queen Coral is necessarily a spoiler, but she might be. That's your call.
I'd say that, like, talking about any of the characters, because the characters are such a treat in these books, that it's almost a spoiler to when you get that, like, introduction of a new character, because the world they put you into the world and you're so blind to everything going on around you that, like, anytime it introduces characters or places, it's like, oh, now I get to figure out how this all works and how this character works.
Yeah, and that is pretty fun. Okay, so we'll talk about her in spoiler corner. Okay, so yeah, after the last video, I took a bunch of different "What tribe are you?" quizzes, and a lot of them were kind of obvious, so I took a bunch of them, averaged out the result, and I got Seawing. So apparently, after trash talking Seawings as being one of the least interesting types of dragon in the last review, that's what I am. Irony. I guess because they're like,
well, Seawings are pretty awesome.
Ones. Like, I guess because their culture is very artsy and writing and stuff like that. So I guess that's why I got put there.
True. I mean, Queen Coral.
Yeah, like I just look at Queen Coral and I'm like, makes sense.
I mean, she is like the one known real writer of the universe.
Yes, and
at least at this point, to my knowledge.
At this point, we will see more in the series with just the Seawings in general and their aesthetics. They are very kind of aesthetic. They do things for the art, and that's kind of part of their thing. So I guess that's why I'm there. So maybe you would also be a Seawing because you're an animator and an artist. They'd probably appreciate that.
Yeah.
But we don't know. So take some quizzes, Tennelle.
All the artists just go to Seawings. I'll have to do that. See which one I am.
I could see maybe like a rain wing too, possibly, but we'll see.
Oh, rain wings are cool. But anyway, I don't want to talk about the third book.
Yeah, we'll wait. We'll be patient.
I do, but yeah. Okay. So in this book, quick summary. Tsunami wants to go find her family because she found out at the end of the last book that she is the lost princess of Queen Coral. And so she is a potential heir to the Seawing Empire tribe clan palace thing. And she goes and she meets her mother. And shenanigans happen.
There's a murder mystery.
And unfortunately, yeah, there's a murder mystery in this one, which is actually written pretty well. And unfortunately, the other 4 dragonettes get locked up for the majority of the book. And if they aren't locked up, Tsunami is mostly ignoring them.
Yeah, like, I think there's one point in the book where they get reunited and they start talking about like what they think is going on, and then she's like, wow, they have missed out on this entire book pretty much. There's so much that they don't know going on.
Right. Like they're making all these guesses about how Queen Coral is probably murdering her children and all that. And you're like, yeah, probably not.
Doubt.
I have my doubts. Although Starflight did make a pretty good case for it.
Yeah,
like just like, I don't think Queen Coral's that conniving.
No, she seems really genuine. Like, she has her faults for sure, but being sneaky and, like, backstabbing isn't one of them.
Although, I will say, with Tsunami not knowing aquatic, it makes it really easy to be sneaky.
Yeah, it does. And that was really cool. I actually like that they have that, because it's like, oh yeah, these dragons do have to talk underwater. How would they do it?
Yeah, and it actually took me for surprise, because I'm so used to, cartoons where it's like anything that can breathe underwater can just talk underwater. So I was just expecting that to happen. And then they're like, no, I can't. Tsunami's like, I can't talk underwater. And then you have that whole scene between her and Riptide where she meets him for the first time, and they're like, they're flashing their lights at each other, and Tsunami ends up saying something like, I like your ears and you smell nice, or something.
Yeah, let me see if I can actually find the quote. And also, like, how desperate is he that he takes this as flirting? Boy!
I know!
Here's the quote, I've got it. You said, hey, sparkling teeth, I totally love 3 of your claws, but not the others, and I wish your nose would eat it, and also your wings sound like sharks snoring. And I'm like, boy, he desperate. He's lonely out there on the watch.
Tsunami, this is your first clue that this guy's probably an outcast. Oh dear.
Like, he doesn't take her to be locked up in whatever passes for a mental asylum in this world.
Right. And I also will say, their romance subplot was pretty cute. Like, it never outstayed its welcome or got too heavy.
Yeah, that's another staple of the first arc is that every single POV dragon gets a love interest, but by the end of the arc, there's only one kind of canon pairing.
Interesting.
So that's going to be fun because there's like the seeds are sown, but not all of them that have a crush or something actually end up together, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how it
it's
is
just
in real
like
life.
and like, I so much enjoy the fact that Tsunami never, like, there's never, because I know you've seen this before in other, like, YA novels or even in children's novels will pull this stuff sometimes where it's like, we didn't have a moment where Tsunami's like, oh, I love him, maybe I could just stay here and screw the prophecy or whatever. She's like, yeah, I got crap to do. He's handsome and cute and stuff, but like, I'm not even sure if I really trust this guy.
Maybe later. Maybe after I save the world, I could have a minute for a date, but
Right. It's just, it's very nonchalant, and I feel it's done appropriately.
And especially because Tsunami's kind of like the quote-unquote boy crazy one of the bunch. Like,
yeah, she's always the one picking up on like who's attracted to who and that kind of thing.
And I'm pretty sure in like early on, I think in like chapter 1 or 2, she mentions that she's had crushes on both Clay and Starflight.
Yeah.
So yeah, like she is kind of, if any of these characters was going to be the boy crazy love chick, it would be Tsunami, who is also like the toughest, most ready to jump into battle one, which I love pairing those together because it's passion. She is a passionate character.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good mix. And it also kind of ties into her ambition as well. Like, first thing she does when she gets to the Sea Kingdom is she's like, I'm gonna take over and rule this place one day. But then when she meets her mother, she's kind of like, oh, I don't know. I would mean that would. And yet again, this is another thing I love that they do. They actually acknowledge the fact that that in order for her to become the queen of this place, she'd have to kill her mom, and she's not sure that she wants to do that.
Yeah, like that's always a part of it. And also I think that that's a big part of her character arc in this as well. Also, I guess we are in spoilers now. So
yeah, we're in spoilers.
We didn't really like, I know we didn't, well, like we gave enough warning, I think, but I'm pretty sure that a big part of her character arc is realizing that maybe she's not cut out to be queen of the Seawings. Maybe she should let that to someone else who, you know, grew up in the culture and knows it better than she does, because she is more or less an outsider, and she can be leader of her friends, but that doesn't mean that she needs to be queen. And that's something that's definitely on her mind, I think, at the end of the book.
Exactly. Well, and she's still dealing with the guilt of killing, spoilers, her father.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing the Dragonet prophecy, and I was like, oh yeah, you're gonna find out who that was, and you were like, oh no, and I'm like, did she guess?
Yeah, I was kind of waiting for it. Like, I'm like, it was a Seawing. It's got to be someone important. It's going to be someone really important. And then we get to this book, and they're talking about this dragon who's been missing, and, you know, Queen Coral's all, like, upset about it. I'm like, yep, it was her dad. Oh, poor Tsunami.
And I believe at the end of this book, no one knows about it yet. I don't think she told anybody.
Yeah, I don't... Did she even tell her friends? I don't think so.
No, I don't think she told anyone. Like, I think Blister knows about it because she has spies in the Skywing Kingdom who saw it, but I don't think anyone knows. Like, anyone close to Tsunami knows what happened.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, maybe they... Well, yeah, because, like, the other Dragonets weren't there when they were talking about Gil dying and revealed that he was king. So I don't think that they know who Gil was. Maybe Starflight does, because he seems to have read scrolls about Queen Coral, so maybe he'd be able to put 2 and 2 together, but if he did, it's never stated.
Well, and for him to be able to recognize Gil when he was, like, so far gone, just from a few scrolls he read, like, that would seem a bit out there.
You'd probably just think it's another dragon with the same name, if anything.
Yeah.
Oh, I found my favorite scene while I was scrolling through the book.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the part where Queen Coral is kind of ambiguous about the whether she might be bad or not. And I don't think that she is. There's like a lot of debate about whether Queen Coral absolutely sucks and is just a selfish moron, or if she's actually trying to be a good queen and just uses her hobby to cope and kind of shoves it on other people, because she's a queen. She is going to be self-centered.
Right.
But it's the one where, like, they're at the council meeting or whatever for breakfast, and Tsunami decides to call her out in the most theatrical fashion possible about how her friends have been treated.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it. Because Tsunami pulls this off so, like, Tsunami would be that boisterous theater kid friend that everyone had in high school.
Very true.
So imagine some of my high school friends doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, and saying people talk about whether Queen Coral is good or bad, you know, I think she's very obviously supposed to be a mix of both. You know, she's not pure evil, but she is very flawed.
She's not Queen Scarlet, but also she's not the big good by any means. And as we've already kind of established, the big good might not actually be that good either.
Well, right, and I think that we've seen, you know, with Queen Scarlet, purposefully malicious. You know, she went out of her way to make other dragons' lives hell. Queen Coral is just kind of unconsciously malicious. She doesn't mean to be hurting the people around her. She just kind of does.
Yeah, like,
and she's not doing it on purpose.
Like, she's so caught up in, like, certain traditions and things like that with, you know, the council meeting going one by one while there's soldiers bleeding out next to them. But because, like, you can't just send the soldiers off because that's not how you do things. It's like she's caught up in this bureaucratic red tape, and I think that actually leads to a lot of her unintentional villainy.
Right, and she's just used to growing up in this environment that it's like, it doesn't occur to her to do the right thing, as opposed to do the thing that tradition says to do.
Well, and also, when it comes to the Dragonettes and how she treats them, she has no investment in this prophecy. She doesn't really care about it. She doesn't even believe in it. She's just mad that her daughter got taken away from her. Like, that's it. That's the end of her involvement. They took my baby, is all she cares about. So, yeah, right. It's no wonder she's not really gung-ho to help them. She doesn't care.
Yeah, I do feel for poor Anemone, though, having to be strapped to her 24/7. Oh my gosh.
Man, Anemone is interesting. Like, her and Tsunami as sisters, I can totally see it. Like, they have such a good sibling relationship right off the bat.
The first line that introduces Anemone is like thinking in her head, an enemy and an enemy, and like she's just comparing herself to her and being jealous she gets to spend with her mother and wondering or something. And an enemy can kind of, especially in those first few chapters, kind of comes off as a little princess or kind of snobbish, and then they flipped on its head as the two get closer together.
Yeah, you do get a sense that even though they've just met, Anemone does admire Tsunami as like the cool big sister, which is Pretty nice, actually. Even though they've just met, you can actually already get the sense that Anemone admires Tsunami as like the cool big sister. And they have kind of that, like Anemone will sneak out and she knows Tsunami's going to keep the secret, and they have like that cool, oh yeah, we're siblings and we get into trouble together kind of thing going, even from very early on.
Yeah.
So with Anemone, I think since we are now into spoilers, we can't really talk about her without talking about Animus magic.
Oh, that's right!
The coolest thing. And how...
and it made their whole palace. That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's very big in the Seawing tribe, which is going to be really interesting when you get to reading Legends Darkstalker. Because that is actually set when the palace was being built.
Oh, cool.
And things happen. There's a reason why they think it destroys your soul.
Oh. Oh, dear.
But yeah, like, it seems to come up a lot in the Seawing, so, that kind of makes up for the whole not having a breath weapon thing.
True. Yeah, I guess they don't have a breath weapon, do they? Mm-hmm. I forgot about
Their breath weapon is not drowning.
Their breath weapon is that they can breathe underwater. Pretty fair trade, honestly.
It comes in instead of going out.
Yeah.
So both Anemone and Orca had magic. That's cool.
Yeah. And I think we should also talk about the murder mystery plot.
Oh yeah, and my least favorite side villain in the whole series so far.
Yeah, this was pretty weak.
I didn't like
the murder mystery up. Like the murder mystery up to the point where like you find out he's involved. But then like when he's given his whole spiel in the dungeon or whatever, it's like, okay, this suddenly went into like a Scooby-Doo cartoon villain reveal here.
Yeah, this was like, I have you now, meddling kids. And it's like, dude, I mean, really, like, this is where we're going with this? He's gonna... And this is the same problem that I had a little later into Dawn of the Clans as well. But yeah, like, I know you haven't finished Dawn of the Clans, or at least last I heard you hadn't, so I'm not gonna go into detail on that. But I really hate that I have you now, my pretty, I'm doing this so I can get the girl kind of villainy. It just seems so cartoonish and weak. Like, it's just not...
Yeah, I heard some of the villains in the second half of Dawn of the Clans are not good.
No, they are... No, like... I don't want to spoil it for you, but... Just stop after the Blazing Star. You don't need to continue.
Oh, dear. Well, I mean, I do have up to those books. I haven't bought the last two yet, so...
Don't. Just don't. They went from being some of my favorite books in the series overall to my least favorite. Like...
Oh, that's so sad.
Possibly worse than Yellowfang's Secret.
That's really bad.
Let's like back to Wings of Fire. Just Whirlpool's whole, oh yeah, I'm gonna marry Anemone, so I gotta get rid of Tsunami, and it's like, no, you don't. You ain't gotta do any of that.
It's like, what will that even really get you, dude? You'll still be like in the same relative position of power.
Yeah, you'll just be Queen's Consort. That's not that much better than what you're doing now. You'll probably be doing the same things. Like, we have yet to see a king in this series, or even a Queen's Consort in this series outside of, Gil in the arena, which, he was in the arena, so he clearly had to have been doing soldier stuff. Like, what more are you going to gain?
Yeah, it's like, I feel like a better story would have been if they would have just gone with Shark being the bad guy or something, Because even though he was obvious, he at least feels like he would make more sense to want to try and, like, take power or whatever.
Yeah, or even just, you know, preserve Queen Coral because... Or even just get rid of her because she's a dragonette of destiny and he's a general. His whole thing is war.
Right.
Because we have seen already that there are plenty of dragons that want the war to keep going for their own ends because there are dragons for whom this is profitable.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
So, yeah, I really think that Shark, even if it was obvious, we've had enough plot twists, honestly. Like, we didn't need one more. We could have done without.
Oh, and I also want to say that Starflight is super, super obvious with what's going on here.
Oh no, he has no subtlety whatsoever.
And yet his friends, especially like Clay, are like, Starflight, why are you so much on Blister's side all of a sudden? It's like, gee, guys, I wonder why.
I mean, even without what's going on, it seems like Blister would be the one he would pick anyway because she's the smart one. But, you know, it's like this couldn't be more transparent. This is so obvious.
And they make it so obvious that he is unsettled by her, even though she is really intelligent.
Yeah, it's
obvious he doesn't want to be supporting her.
Yeah, who seems like the most skeezed out by her. He's like, oh, this person's clearly a bad idea.
But what if we picked her, guys?
He's like, yeah, I know that she's like the most obviously evil one, but...
But I've been told that we should pick her, so...
Yeah, and that's even kind of highlighted by...
But that's not been confirmed.
Yeah. I know that even that's
really
like,
obvious.
It's highlighted by Tsunami's own inner monologue where she's like, yeah, everyone keeps saying that we're going to choose who wins this war, but how are we going to do that and who are we going to pick? Everyone's awful.
Right.
And
yeah, I mean, I'm just going to make a guess here. And you obviously don't have to say anything. You preferably don't. But I'm just going to guess that they're not going to go with Blaze, Burn, or Blister, and they're going to find some other solution. But who knows? Maybe the books will surprise me.
I can't say anything.
That's all right. I don't want you to. So do we have any other thoughts we want to talk about with The Lost Heir? Oh, I guess we didn't talk about Orca at all.
No, we haven't talked about her, and she's actually... I kind of wish that they would release one of the novellas, which, by the way, I ordered because the first 3 came out in paperback, and I am getting those. They're in the mail.
Nice.
So we can have some perspectives on that as well, because they are now in paperback. I don't know if you have ebooks. I don't like them, so I wait for things to be released, but...
Yeah, I don't like
they're just little side stories. Like, they're just side stories about some minor characters, but I really wish we could get one from Orca's perspective because she seems so interesting.
Yeah, I was really hoping that this book would go into more detail about why she did the things she did, because she seemed like a genuinely good candidate for queen, and then so for her to be the one who's like killing her siblings and stuff was kind of like, oh, well, what spurred that? Like, it makes sense, but it's still like, I wish I knew more about her motives.
I just want to know how, and this might be a plot hole in hindsight, how they didn't, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but did they know that she was an Animus?
No. She kept it hidden that whole time. Okay,
so those of you who have read any of the more recent books, plot hole. Because... I don't know. I don't think they can keep that a secret because I don't think that this is too much of a spoiler because it's more just a little bit of world building that doesn't really factor into much. But the Seawings are very much aware that they have a higher percent of Animus dragons and they test for it. So I don't know how they didn't know that she was an Animus. Because they do a test when they're like 3 years old that any of them have to, they all have to do it, and that's usually how they find out how they're Animus dragons, if they haven't already been doing magic before that point. So they should have known that she was an Animus.
I guess I'll have to see. I'll have to come back to you on that, whether I think that's a bit of a plot hole or not.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, that's why I really want a book from her perspective, because I'm like, did she find a way to trick the test? And, did she just willfully somehow avoid using her magic? And, because that is definitely something that I could see them wanting to keep a secret, especially if you've got ambitions to be queen, because, there's a lot of things that could go wrong with that, so...
Yeah, I mean, I could see it as one of two ways. Either she willfully kept it a secret, or she somehow didn't learn her Animus powers or necessarily, get them until after she took the test.
Yeah. I would actually say if any of y'all have any theories on that, leave them in the description, but don't spoil anything.
Yes,
about who's an Animus and who's not an Animus and all that.
Please don't write about spoilers in my comments.
If you have a very vague theory that could apply to any dragon, leave it in the comments. But no, Orca's so interesting, especially because, so as we mentioned, to become queen, you kill your mom. And obviously the queens know that, so when they have daughters, there's probably some tension.
Right.
But at the same time, you want your line to continue, so there's this striking this balance of, I want to keep being queen, but I don't want my lineage to die out. What do?
Right. It's a very bizarre concept, and it's very fitting for this brutal world that this takes place in. But yet again, it just makes me want to know more about Coral, because everyone seemed to love her, and Queen Coral loved her, and yet for whatever reason, Orca decided to try and take the throne when she was just an adult. So, what happened?
Yeah, and I think that more feeds into the whole Animus magic corrupts your soul thing. Or at least I think that's the angle they're playing it with, where, she was using her magic already, and we don't know how much she did. We don't know how many things she enchanted. We do know that she enchanted the statue to kill any female royal egg in the hatchery. And she intended for it to be used on her own daughters. And then she messed up.
Yeah, that's really messed up, Coral. Or Orca, not Coral.
Yeah, and then, I mean, it makes sense, because then I guess when she was, I'm assuming, because again, we don't know, and I really wish we knew. Twee Sutherland, if you watch this, please write more about Orca. But I'm guessing that her mindset was that once she was queen, when she was ready to have an heir, she would just not keep the egg in the hatchery, or would have the statue moved or de-enchanted or something. But
right, or just destroy the statue or remove the magic from it or whatever.
Yeah, something like that, where she would be actually, I don't like that statue anymore, let's get rid of it, and then, or just not have the egg in there or something. But I mean, it's a convenient way to still have plenty of kids without worrying about accidentally having a daughter.
Yeah,
I guess, because there are a lot of
I guess.
There's a lot of princes running around, so I mean, they don't really care about them too much, I guess.
Although another thing, Orca, it's really screwed up of you to have the statue only go after eggs that are close to hatching.
Yeah, that's bull. Or I don't know, maybe it could be possible that it just wasn't left alone until that point, but still.
I mean, we gotta assume.
I mean, that's just the fact that she cast this spell in the first place. She could have just cast a spell to not have any females until she was ready. Would have been just as easy.
True.
And that's the thing with
Orca,
Animus magic.
you might not have thought this through.
I think that is the thing with Animus magic, though, is that it kind of encourages you to abuse it the more you actually use it, or at least that's how it appears to be. Because most of the time when you see Animus magic pop up in the series, there's an obvious, peaceful solution that they completely ignore.
You gotta go with the flamboyant, weird route that makes no sense. Magic.
Even with Anemone and her spells, I notice a lot of the time she enchants things like spears, and there's like a billion rocks that she could enchant instead. But instead, she's like, I enchant this spear to seek out the person. And it's like, yeah, I guess it's so she'll have a weapon when she gets there, but also magic. She has every weapon she needs. She is the weapon.
Right.
No, but yeah, Animus magic is really fun, and I like what the series does with it. It's interesting, and what it does to the characters.
I'm interested to see it come up because, like, there's no way you can introduce it like that and not bring it back for something really cool later.
Yeah, it is going to be like a major thing in the second arc. They really explore it and do a lot of things with it that's really fun. A lot of things that you might not even like think of at first, and then they do it, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess you can do that, because there's no limitations on what Animus magic can do aside from it makes you kind of evil when you use it, but it can do anything. Like, it is the, press button to do anything kind of
magic.
Yeah, it's not like Harry Potter or something where it's like, here's the different types of magic and here's what the different types of magic do and you have to work within these guidelines. It can do literally anything. Like, it can defy the laws of physics.
Yeah, it's very free form.
Like, and there doesn't seem to be any limit to it either. Like, once you imagine you can do something with it, you can do that thing. Like, it's really not something you need to train for. It's really not something that needs to be built up. Like, once you decide, I want to do this, it doesn't matter how big that thing is, it can happen.
Although, apparently, if you do something big, it also makes you crazy. Apparently.
Yeah, like, that's the downside, is that it will, increase the damage that you do. But...
Right.
There has to be some kind of trade-off, but also if you're doing those big crazy things, there's probably not a whole lot of soul left anyway.
So, is there anything else we want to talk about with this book? We could talk about, like, webs, I guess.
Man, I don't care about webs. Understandably, Webs is the only remaining caretaker that they have left because Kestrel is dead, and now they know that, and it's probably a good thing Peril didn't go with her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Webs is also like the weakest personality of the caretakers that they had. He's the really wishy-washy one who's not really interested in doing all that much. And I'm like, couldn't Dune have survived?
I know, I liked Dune.
Like,
I even liked Kestrel to like a certain degree.
It's like, yeah, Kestrel's mean, but she's interesting. Webs is just kind of bland, and his only real contribution to this book is that he's Riptide's dad. And, like, what plain Jane Seawing mated with that?
Oh, poor Webs. Such a coward. And they never address the question of, like, why didn't he teach Tsunami aquatic? Was he just a coward and lazy?
He was just an asshole. That's the only... He just didn't feel like it, I guess.
In 6 years, it's just like, can't be bothered.
Yeah, he's just like, whatever. She's not going to be talking to any Seawings anyway. At least not any Seawings we don't approve
Webs.
of. And what happens in the epilogue of this book? I don't recall.
It's another scene where Marosier is talking with Blister about Is he talking about the backup button?
Yeah, so now you're on to, now you know about the alternate dragonettes.
Yep.
Which is great, because I couldn't talk about them before. And this was... Okay, yeah, so Queen Blister would know what... Oh no, she wasn't the one. Because I remember back when, in the first book, when Scarlet and Byrne were saying, like, oh, do you think you're the only dragonettes that have, you know, claimed this and shit? And I was like, oh, there's someone that they could be talking about, but I can't tell you who. This is who I meant. But I still don't think that they would have known about these, because they don't know what the Talons of Peace are doing.
I kind of got a feeling that there would be, like, backup dragonettes, just because the Talons of Peace are so freaking shady. Desperate to get this done.
And not only to get it done, but to get it done their way.
Right.
Because Marosir is the leader of the Talons of Peace, so what the Nightwings have decided is also what the Talons of Peace have decided, so they're all in for Blister. And if the Dragonettes had stayed in the cave, they would have been told to choose Blister.
Yeah.
Just, they're so... I guess that's why they're called Nightwings, because they're so shady.
Zing, 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 zing. Take it. Yeah, when they're like, oh, well, we'll just replace the Dragonettes we don't like, who are bad for our cause. I'm like, oh.
Man, I hate the replacement Dragonettes so much, too. Like, with the exception of one of them, I hate the replacement Dragonettes so much.
Oh.
They're all terrible.
Yeah, you definitely, like... Does it go... I forget if in the epilogue it goes... They, like, have any dialogue with each other? Do they actually appear?
No, they're just mentioned as that there is an alternate set.
Okay. Well, I know they come into the next book, and yeah, they're a real piece of work. I'll just say that, because I don't want to go into the next book yet.
Yeah, no, it's just... they're all just... With the exception of one of them, they suck. I don't like them.
Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up our thoughts on The Lost Heir.
Yeah, it was... I mean, I know we complained about... Or not complained. I know we critiqued a few different things, but there's so much good to say about these that you kind of have to, because otherwise you'd be talking for hours and hours about how great these are.
Right. Like, I definitely think... hint, hint, wink, wink, that I'll probably be doing, like, a Simi Speaks about these books eventually. But, like, I want to have a broader picture of, like, how character arcs go throughout the whole series and all that. But this is a really strong sequel to what was already a really strong first book.
Yeah. I imagine that once we're done with the first arc of these, we'll probably both do, like, overview videos.
Yeah, probably.
About our different takes on the series, because, I mean, we both like them, but we both like different things and have issues with different things, so I'm sure that it's not going to be, like, the same video or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, Lost Heir was probably my favorite book in the first arc of this, so... That's not to say anything bad about the books that are coming, but I just really liked Lost Heir a lot. I think that Tsunami was great. I think her character arc was perfect, and it just took something that was already great and then built on it and made it even better.
It tells a very complete story, too. Like, it has a very clear beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah. Like, you could almost pick up The Lost Heir having not read the Dragonette Prophecy and not intending to read The Hidden Kingdom and still get a very complete reading experience. And that's what I think that every book in a series should do. Like, with few exceptions, I think that when you have a series of books, each book should feel complete.
Right, like this felt like its own episode.
Yeah, it's really good. So if you like the Dragonette Prophecy, it only gets better from there.
Yeah, awesome. And Next up, we will be doing The Hidden Kingdom, which probably won't be long because I've already read it. So hopefully in the next, week or two, we will have that review up on Avalanche channel. So I will have a link to it down in the description and probably as a card. So go check that out. And I guess we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, definitely. So if any of you guys like hearing my voice and probably hearing me in some of the Patreon streams as well, come check out my channel. I review whatever I feel like reviewing that day and other stuff. So yeah.
She's got some really awesome reviews of books, of movies, of different tropes talks about feminism and YA novels. That was a really good video you guys just put up, so I really recommend that too. But you guys should go check out her channel.
Fun. Yes, and you're already subscribed to Tennelle, so I probably don't need to tell you to do that. But if somehow you are seeing this video in the distant future from the archives and haven't subscribed to Tennelle and the Tennelle channel still exists, subscribe to it.
Yeah, and look forward to more Wings of Fire content in the future, because I'm loving this series.
It's great, and it's going to continue. I believe that Arc 3's been confirmed, and there's going to be graphic novels, so we'll have lots to talk about in years to come.
Woo! Looking forward to it. That's exactly what I need, is another addiction besides Warriors. Oh boy.
When one runs dry, you just go to the other one. It's fine.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap that up. We're going to wrap it up here. So thank you for joining us. We will see you guys next time.
Bye.